Hey folks, welcome to week 4 of DMD100, Intro to Digital Media Design. How is everybody? How's it going? All right, so let's see what's going on in week 4. We'll go to our week 4 module, take a look at the overview here. Okay, so this week is a fairly light week because there's a bunch of work to be done for our semester project. So as far as our topic this week, we are going to be going over something called steps removed from reality. We'll talk about this a little bit more later in the week, but for now we're just going to do a quick overview of it, sort of a discussion about the nature of visual reality, how perception can influence what we perceive as real and not real. And what is an acceptable definition of this? What tools can we use to deconstruct that reality? And as somebody who's going to make visual design content, how can you use that to your advantage in creating your content, like our title sequence that we're going to be making? There is one consumable this week right here under Read, Listen, Read, View, Listen, Do. There's a video to watch, Reality and Perception. Now this is specifically related to the movie The Matrix. So if you haven't seen the movie The Matrix, maybe you might want to watch it. It's a fun sort of 90s sci-fi thriller. You're probably familiar with it. But anyway, this is a great video in that it takes some of the things that happen in The Matrix and pairs them up against philosophical sort of perception definitions and talks about sort of how we see things and how reality is perceived through the human brain. So check that out. That is your consumable for this week. And then in a second, we're going to take a look at step 2 of our semester project. That is pretty much what you're working on all week. You'll notice that nothing is due this week. So you have no media analysis, no discussion board, nothing due this week other than to work on step 2 of your semester project. So we're going to go over that in a minute because that's going to eat up the majority of your week. All right, so let's take a look at an example of what we're talking about in terms of altering reality. Now we talked in week 1 when we went over sort of the 8 basic tenets of visual literacy, that sort of the idea of removing something from reality is a tool that you can use in creating visual content. So this here is a photograph of a van inside of a parking garage somewhere over in Europe. And so if we were actually there, if you were physically standing in this parking garage, well, that's your reality. Now, we could have discussions about whether or not, reality is subjective from your first person point of view, but that's probably getting a little too philosophical for this particular class, although that is certainly something to think about from a philosophy point of view. And you'll get into that a little bit in this week's video. But let's just assume for the sake of argument that if you were standing in this parking garage looking at this van, then that is your current reality, right? You can see that it's a blue van, it's got a white top, there's a big giant multi-paned window in the garage, and you can see that the garage door is green and yellow. There's some writing above it. There's some sort of warehouse or store outside of the garage. The garage is pretty empty other than this van, and so on and so forth. You can make all sorts of perceptual classifications about what's going on. You can document what you're seeing in front of you. You could go over and touch the van. You could open up the door of the van. You could touch any of the other elements within the garage. You could maybe smell some smells. Maybe you can smell some gasoline or some other things inside the garage, things you might normally smell in a garage. So that is your reality. Now, this here is a photograph of that. So just simply by nature that this is a photograph, that is one step removed from that reality, right? It's a photo of a reality that you may have been standing in had you taken this photograph. So we'll call that one step removed from reality, right? Now, years ago, we used to try to get some interesting images by taking photographs and putting them on photocopy machines and then manipulating the way in which we would handle the photograph on the photocopy machine. We would drag it around, we would rotate it, we might change the settings on the photocopy machine to be kind of extreme, like turn the contrast way up or turn the brightness way down or something like that, and just kind of play around with it. So this here is a series of manipulations that were done on a photocopy machine, taking this photograph of this van in this parking garage. So again, this is one step removed from reality, and then you put it on the photocopy machine and maybe you switch it over to black and white. So now we're 2 steps removed from reality, right? This reality does not have color in it anymore. And then you change the settings on the photocopy machine so that it's a little more granular. So now we're 3 steps removed from reality. And then we adjust the contrast, so we're 4 steps removed. Now we start to drag the photograph across the glass of the photocopy machine as it is making a copy, and so now we're yet another step removed from reality. And now we're twisting it as the photocopy machine is working, so now we're even further away from reality. And of course now it doesn't resemble the original situation much at all, right? Unless you were familiar with that original photograph, you probably wouldn't recognize any of this. And then you twist it one more angle as you're photocopying it, and now it's even further removed from reality. And so now if I showed you this without all the context of the original photograph, if we didn't discuss the parking garage and the van, you might think, oh, that's an interesting manipulation. I've got some blurry lines, some wavy lines, these white outlines that seem to be kind of morphed and liquid looking. Maybe there's some typography over here in the lower right corner, but I can't really tell. So it's definitely some kind of a manipulation. Now, any of these along the way could be useful visual content for you as a visual designer. You could use this as a background image for some typography for your title sequence. It could be a texture that you use for a poster design. It could be used in a web design for an advertisement or for a web banner. It doesn't matter what it originally started out being. Now it's just an interesting looking piece of visual something, right? So that can be used from there. All right, let's look at a digital version of this. Now here we're going in the opposite direction. We're showing you the results of the manipulation, and then we're going to slowly make our way back to the original, okay? So you can see up here that there's 9 slides, so you can kind of guess how many steps removed from reality this is. But you're looking at this and you think, oh, this might be a close-up of a platelet from a microscope, perhaps. This could be some kind of cell or blob or virus or something we're looking at, who knows. The colors are a little strange, it's kind of purpley and blue. You get some white, some black outline. It's definitely pixelated to a certain degree, so maybe this shows some digital enhancement. All right, let's go through the steps. All right, now we move one more step closer to reality. Still not super recognizable. Maybe it's a map. Maybe this is an ocean. These are land masses around the outside, possibly. There's another one. Maybe now you can start to see what it might be. Notice the colors are changing. It's starting to rotate a little bit. Now it's very out of focus, very blurry, very jittery, but the source of the image seems to be a little more obvious. Now it's coming into play. But even at this, it's still not how it would be seen in reality, right? It's been manipulated, it's been altered. It's meant to look like a drawing or something like that. Now we're changing a little further, and a little more. And now, of course, you can definitely tell what it is, even though it still doesn't look like it would in reality. Now it rotates. Now we're back on the right axis, at least. And then there's our original photograph. Now again, the photograph is one step removed from reality. If you were here in front of this dog for his birthday party, then you would actually be in that reality. But you can see that this photo got manipulated to the point where it changed not only the way it looks, but also its tone, its narrative, what it might imply. You know, this is obviously a happy photograph. Something good is happening here. It's a dog's birthday party, right? Can't go wrong with that. Clearly it's a good time on a nice sunny day. Presumably he's waiting for his dog friends to show up for his party. But then as we remove it from reality, it gets further and further away from that story and gets to the point where it really doesn't resemble that at all. Everything from the colors to the visuals that are being represented have changed so much that it tells a completely different story. And all these steps along the way, well, they also tell different stories as we get closer and closer back to the original. So through manipulation of imagery, whether you do it digitally or whether you do it using a photocopy machine or whether you do it in camera using a camera that you might have, or any number of other ways you might manipulate something visually, either changing its color palette or making it blurry or adding filters or effects to it or twisting it or whatever, you are removing it multiple steps away from its original source, from reality. And each of those are valid representations of that reality that you, as a designer, can use in your piece. So while this might have started out as a cute dog on his birthday party, well, maybe you decide to use this version of the manipulation as something else. Maybe you can use this in your semester project or somewhere else in some other visual design. And nobody but you needs to know what the original photo was. It's just an interesting texture. It's interesting color. Or, of course, if you really want, you can go back and use the dog. Okay, so you get the idea. It's actually a really simple concept in practice, is that the images that you have, whether they be photographs or illustrations or graphics or whatever, don't have to be used exactly the way that you see them. You can make alterations to them and change them through any number of means, whether it be digital, analog, and that removes it multiple steps away from reality and turns it into something else entirely that can be interpreted differently. Okay, so hopefully you understand that basic concept. It's really pretty simple. I would encourage you to play around with such things, whether it be in Photoshop or on a photocopy machine or in doing something with your camera on your phone, or if you have a freestanding camera, just playing around with different ways of getting photos and changing them. Okay, so like I said, the main thing you're spending your time on this week is step 2 of our semester-long project. Let's take a look at that. So here's the semester-long project. So remember last week you guys did step 1, which was to choose one of these television shows or movies, get to know it really well, and then decide which one you were going to work with for the remainder of the semester. And you're going to rewrite its plot summary under a completely different genre. So for example, you might have chosen The Fugitive, which originally was an action-adventure TV show, and maybe you turn it into a romantic comedy or something like that. Or maybe you chose When Harry Met Sally, which is a famous romantic comedy movie, and you turned it into a horror movie. So by now you've done this. You have rewritten the plot summary. You've, of course, decided on a new genre and a new subgenre, and you've turned that in. So now it's time to move on to step 2. Now, step 2 is based on the new movie that you are creating or the new TV show. You're gonna be asked to create this title sequence for this new movie or TV show. Now, of course, before we can build the title sequence, we need to start collecting some imagery. So there's a few things to consume here. So there's also more consumables this week. But there's also some collecting to do. So with your plot summary in hand, your newly written plot summary, you're now going to go about researching topics that are related to the film or show and collecting imagery, graphics, colors, type, music, sounds, any other elements that could serve as inspiration for your title sequence. After, of course, some artistic interpretation, right? Just like we were talking about in terms of last week, we talked about artistic interpretation, and then today we talked about removing items from reality to be used in your actual title sequence. But now, of course, before you can do that, you need to understand exactly what a title sequence is. We've been talking about this in kind of an abstract format so far this entire semester, so let's see what it is exactly. So a title sequence, also called an opening sequence or an intro, is a method by which film and television programs present their title, their key production and cast members, utilizing conceptual visuals and sound. It typically includes or begins the text of the opening credits. It helps establish the setting and tone for the program. Now, you've probably seen these before and maybe not paid a lot of attention to them, so here are some examples. This link here is a compilation of really great title sequences. So if you open this up, it'll take you out to this YouTube channel where you can check out a whole bunch of sort of what they're considering the best opening title sequences. So you can certainly check these out for sure. And this is a compilation, like I said, but there's also some specific ones here. Top 10 TV show title sequences, and then these ones I sort of handpicked because I think they're really good. This is from Marvel's Daredevil TV show from a few years ago. This is from the movie Catch Me If You Can. This is from the Royal Tenenbaums. This is from X-Men First Class, and then there's another collection of them. Now, a little later in the week, we're going to look at some of these together and talk about them. So be prepared to discuss some of these, but certainly check them out on your own just to really wrap your head around what the heck is a title sequence. And if you want to learn more, there's a really great tutorial, how to make your own title sequence and the theory behind them, which will help sort of deepen your knowledge of what title sequences are. Also, a little word about closing credits. Sometimes I get confused with title sequences. Those, of course, happen at the very end of the movie or the television show, and they can also be visually designed using sound and typography and whatnot, and they can certainly be really visually interesting, but that's not what we're making here. We're making title sequences, but they do have a lot in common. Now, what are you actually going to do for step 2? Well, this is it right here. You're going to research and collect as much collateral, as much stuff as you can to act as your inspiration and raw material for your upcoming title sequence. You're just collecting stuff right now. You're not building the title sequence, you're just collecting things that you think would be useful in your title sequence. So it can be photography, graphics, illustrations, establish some color palettes, choose some typography, maybe get some music or sound clips, and just sort of put them all together nice and organized in a folder on your computer so you have them ready to go. Your research can be from anywhere, but of course make sure that you cite your sources, right? You can use this thing right here. Citation Machine is a really great online tool for creating citations, not just from books and magazines, but also from websites and a variety of other places. So be sure to use Citation Machine. Just hit Create Citation and it will walk you through it. It's really great. So keep like a Microsoft Word document going so you can keep a running list of where you get all your stuff from. Now, here's some suggestions. You can get free to use open source photography from Unsplash or Pexels. So I would definitely recommend them. Pexels also recently has added short video clips to their collection of free stuff you can use. So check that out. You can also get vector graphics, photography, and also video clips from Pixabay. Unsplash and Pexels you can use without having to sign in at all. Pixabay you do have to sign in using like a Google account, but either way, all of these are free to use. So certainly look around and gather up a bunch of photos, a bunch of video clips, whatever you think you're going to need to construct your title sequence. Gather more things than you think you need. Now, your goal here is to sort of look for inspiration, things that you're like, oh, that's really cool, that would go great in my title sequence, based on how I'm reimagining my movie or my TV show. Try to choose photos or videos or illustrations or whatever that feel like they go together, right? That they look good together. They don't pick a brightly colored cartoon image and then put it with a moody, dark photograph. They're probably not going to work together very well. So try to go with a visual theme that's appropriate for your newly imagined show or movie, and that all sort of look like they go together. Now, once you've got a nice pile of visuals, whether it be photography, video clips, or whatever, then you can start looking at some sounds. So these two options are great for downloading sound clips that you can use. Audio Archive is an eclectic library of various types of sounds, music, podcasts, audiobooks, all sorts of crazy stuff, dating back many, many years all the way up until recent stuff. So take some time and dig through that. It's going to take you a while to get through it. And then if you're looking for just sound effects, Freesound is the perfect place to go for that. And of course, you are encouraged to create your own collateral as well. If you want to shoot your own photographs, create your own illustrations, record your own sounds, I am totally down with that. So that is step 2, is you're going to just collect all this stuff into a nice, neat pile on your computer. The reason why I'm giving you all week to do this is because it's going to take you a while to really dig around and find some stuff that really matches your newly written plot summary, okay? All right, so get to know what title sequences are and start collecting your stuff. A little later in the week, we will talk more about this, but that's it for right now. If you need me, you know where to find me on the office hours or on email, and I will talk to you soon.